Hello, I'm Kazoka Chiasm. Today I'm creating a new peaceful skyblock world. You can see my settings as I put them in. I'm using the mod mcskyblock as well as various other mods, which I might highlight when they become relevant. This is my first video like this and my second video on this channel. I thought I would talk about some issues while playing Minecraft. I'm very new to this whole recording thing, and this is my first time talking, so please bear with me. Sorry in advance for the poor quality of the sound and video. My setup is not ideal, and I'm doing the best I can. So, the issue I'm going to talk about today is MRAs versus RADFEMS. I'll start by defining both sides and breaking down their beliefs so that you understand. An MRA is a men's rights activist. These are people who believe the world is secretly controlled by women and that men are the oppressed group. They don't believe we live in a patriarchal society at all, and that women have woven this lie in order to oppress men. They think that by raising the standard of rights for women, they would be lowering the standard for men. It's basically like anti Semitic views, except they're replacing Jews with women. Many of these people have valid arguments, though, against the pressure put on men to perform masculinity, and how toxic it can be to their mental health, as well as how male victims of abuse are often brushed aside or made to feel like they're weak for being victimized, or that their trauma isn't legit because they're men. On the other side of the coin, you have RADFEMS, or radical feminists. Radical feminism is a brand of feminism that argues that because we live in a patriarchal society where there's an inherent power imbalance, women are literally incapable of consent. This means that every relationship between a woman and a man is viewed as inherently abusive, and men are considered inherently abusers. Because men are viewed in such a low light, women, juxtaposed against that, are seen as inherently pure and innocent. Radfems believe women are incapable of abusing men because in a patriarchal society, men always have the power. Many of these people have valid arguments, though, against the threat of violence women face on a day to day basis from men who, believing it's just normal, perform their masculinity in ways that belittles women, including catcalling, because having a stranger make unsolicited sexual remarks, or any remarks for that matter, on your body is overstepping a boundary women have drawn that men habitually violate. Before the Radfem, just the presence of men in any given space is a threat to female welfare. Ironically, many of their arguments against the behavior of men echoes the arguments MRAs have on the pressures to behave in such a way. Many MRAs believe in some inherent male hierarchy in which the jerks at the top get the girls while the nice guys at the lower ranks get overlooked. They believe this is a hierarchy women have set up. This is the foundation of the incel mindset. Incels are involuntarily celibate because they're virgins who want to have sex but can't find women who are willing to sleep with them. They believe this is inherently the fault of women, because women are shallow and never give nice guys like them a chance. If the flaws of both these mindsets aren't obvious, you should really keep listening. These two opposing groups with wildly differing beliefs really have an issue with the same problem: toxic masculinity. However, the RADFEM reduces it down to masculinity bad, femininity good, while the MRAs reduce it down to masculinity hard because women hold men to a difficult standards. So, by blaming each other, these two groups actually just feed into each other, pushing young girls into RADFEM ideology and young guys into MRA ideology. The more women reject men, the more men blame women, the more women reject men, etc., etc. It's a vicious cycle. So, because of this, we're seeing a gulf forming between men and women that only serves to alienate both groups and force them to each perform their own gender role more strictly, which is, of course, the root of the problem: gender roles. There's nothing inherently bad about masculinity or femininity. The pressure to perform in a certain way is the problem. Men are taught from a young age that any emotion beyond anger and pride are shameful. They're taught that it's emasculating to be gentle. That's also the problem. Men are so afraid of being emasculated because anything that correlates them with femininity is considered shameful. Obviously, it's basic misogyny. Men are taught to feel that womanhood is shameful because women are somehow less than men. In fact, all of the problems men have with toxic masculinity stems from misogyny. Boys can't cry, that's because girls cry, and girls are weak, so crying makes you weak. Boys fighting or catcalling or otherwise being aggressive is just boys being boys. That's a highly malignant narrative inflicted on young boys by both men and women. But at its heart, it's just another form of boys can't show emotion because that's girl stuff, which leads back to why girl stuff is considered problematic. It's misogyny. Have you ever wondered why boys can't play with dolls? It's because dolls that represent children are a teaching tool for future mommies, because it's the woman's job to take care of the children, right? And dolls that represent women are meant to be stand ins for the women girls are meant to become. And if a boy plays with them, well, then he might just decide he wants to be a woman, and that would be demeaning because women are less than men. Misogyny. And a boy can't play with a doll that represents a man either unless it's called an action figure, because boy dolls are stand in for future husbands as well. And if a boy plays with them, well, he might just end up gay. And that would be demeaning because if he takes on the quote unquote woman's role and submits to another man, that puts him on equal footing with a woman, which is demeaning because women are less than men. See how misogyny plays a role even in transphobia and homophobia? There's a reason pink is associated so strictly with womanhood, and that reason is that Hitler had pink triangles put on gay men during the Holocaust. Before that, pink was considered a perfectly fine color for boys, but as soon as it became emasculated, it became strictly for girls. So MRAs are men that blame women for the negative results of misogyny on men, mistaking it for some form of misandry instead. But that isn't to say RADFEMS are off the hook. On the contrary, their belief system is equally harmful to both men and women because it's equally misogynistic. How, you might wonder, can I call the belief that all men are evil and all women are pure misogyny and not misandry? It's simple. RADFEMS believe women have no autonomy of their own, which is both infantilizing and demeaning towards women. They often reduce women to their body parts and their functions. Basically, you're not a real woman if you do this or don't do that, because women are biologically predisposed to be gentle and maternal and all the things toxic masculinity teaches boys that women are and men are not. But radfems obviously hate men, so that must be misandry, right? Well, the thing is, because women are considered less than men in our society, they are the oppressed group. We do live in a patriarchy. However, that isn't to say that men are all evil oppressors that are never oppressed. It's just that our society caters to men more than women, and most of the oppression men face because they are men is rooted in misogyny. Misogyny hurts both women and men equally. The fundamental problem with both these groups is gender essentialism. That is, the belief that men and women are biologically predisposed to being a certain way. This is the fundamental belief of eugenics, which is the belief that certain groups of people are biologically superior to other groups and should therefore be the predominant and sovereign group, which is, of course, the underlying cause of the Holocaust and really any genocide. It's a dangerous ideology and it gets people killed. So, if one group believes women rule the world and men are subservient, but deep down believe men should rule the world, some even going so far as to suggest they receive government mandated girlfriends, and the other group believes women are completely helpless because men rule the world, but deep down believe women should rule the world. Where's the middle ground? What group is pushing for true equality? Simple. It's feminism. Just regular feminism. Now hold on, you might say. Feminism has female in its name, so clearly it's pushing for women to rule the world. That's actually completely false and an unfortunate misconception. Feminism, by definition, is about acknowledging that we do live in a patriarchal society, and that women are widely considered less than men, and then bring both women and men up to a higher, equal standard. One where neither group is forced to adhere to strict gender roles. Because people are widely varied, and some women are more masculine and some men are more feminine, and there's nothing wrong or demeaning about that. The idea is to break down gender roles entirely and just let people be themselves, regardless of how they choose to express their gender. And if a man likes skirts and makeup, it doesn't make him any less a man. And if a woman likes mechanics and football, it doesn't make her any less a woman. Because gender is something fundamental to oneself and completely divorced from gender expression. Gender roles takes all the things a human might enjoy and divides it into neat little boxes labeled men and women, and then forces men and women to adhere to the things in their box, which is harmful for everyone involved because it stifles the true person and the desires of who they are and who they want to be. If everyone was free to just be themselves, whatever they enjoy, instead of being forced into gender roles, everyone would be a lot happier. Fundamentally, there is little difference between men and women that isn't completely made up by society. A difference in genitals does not fundamentally change who a person is. If, say, you're a cisgender woman and you were to wake up one morning and have a penis, you wouldn't suddenly like sports and beer if you didn't like them before. Likewise, if you're a cisgender man and you woke up one morning with a vagina, you wouldn't suddenly want to wear makeup and give birth to children. Do you see what I'm saying? Gender roles are a societal creation that limits both men and women and really has nothing to do with gender other than that's the labels put on the categories created. Now, I use a term you might not be familiar with. I use the word cisgender. Someone who is cisgender identifies as the gender they were assigned at birth. Basically, anyone who isn't transgender is cisgender. People who are transgender identify with a gender other than the one they were assigned at birth. Now, hold up a minute, you may be saying. Don't trans people just want the opposite gender's gender role? I remember a video I saw some years ago by Lacey Green about transgender people and how they're trans because they like the things in the other gender role. This was shortly before she went off the rails into turfdom. A TERF, if you don't know, is a trans-exclusionary radical feminist. It's RADFEMS who believe that trans men are women who are abandoning their righteous womanhood to gain social status as men, and that trans women are men who are trying to invade women's spaces in order to prey on them. The idea that gender identity correlates to gender roles is like TERF light, diet TERF, if you will. It still forces men and women into the same boxes, which are inherently sexist, and then states that trans people are inherently sexist because of it. So if trans people aren't trans because of gender roles, why are they trans? It's simple. Humans have a fundamental sense of self that they begin to develop in early childhood. You can call it the soul or whatever you like. Going back to my example of waking up with the opposite genitals and how that wouldn't change you fundamentally as a person, if you're a cisgender man and you woke up with a vagina, you wouldn't suddenly feel like a woman or jump to embrace womanhood, whatever that may look like. Even if you were still able to act the exact same way and like the exact same things, there would be a disconnect between your body and your fundamental sense of self. Now imagine that disconnect existed your whole remembered life. Something always felt off. Maybe you realized early on that you were trans. Or maybe it took you a very long time to figure yourself out and what that nagging sense of disconnect meant. For some people, it takes one tongue slip of ma'am or sir, and it's a new experience and feels so right that everything clicks into place and they go, oh. Sometimes it takes gender euphoria to recognize gender dysphoria for what it is. So, because gender identity is different from gender roles or gender expression, a trans man wearing a skirt is no less a man, and a trans woman enjoying cars is no less a woman, because a cis man or a cis woman enjoying those things makes them no less their gender either. So, in conclusion, MRAs and RADFEMS are both equally misogynistic, just in different ways. Trans women are women, and trans men are men, and neither are inherently sexist in any way. Misogyny hurts everyone. Misandry doesn't really exist because it's just the resulting damage done by misogyny. And remember the feminist slogan, dinner rolls, not gender roles. This is the Wind Hopper mod and the Ore Farming Device mod. Thank you for watching my video. This is Kazoka Chiasm, signing off.